everyone, and welcome back to Fear the Final Girl, a Van Ryder Games podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and back this month we have Evan. He wasn't here last month, and everybody missed him just so terribly. So say hello, Evan.
Hello, Evan.
Thank you, Evan.
Oh, hey! That joke's still alive and well.
It's still alive and well. I love it. So today's theme is all about fear, horror, and setting yourself up for just the happiest of Halloweens. And of course, we have a super cool special guest with us today. We have Jay Cormier, designer, publisher, game design instructor, so many different things. Jay, we would love for you to introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit more about you.
Oh, thanks so much. Happy to be here. So my name's Jay Cormier. I've designed, 20-ish games or whatnot, like from Belfort and Hereditary and Junkard and Mind Management and more. And then I became a publisher. I founded the Fail Faster company, which is helping game designers with a Fail Faster journal to help them take notes, and then also the Fail Faster online course, and then an upcoming game product called Design Your Destiny. And then, I also teach. I've been teaching game design for like 10 years at a Vancouver Film School. It's part of their video game design program.
Another Canadian, Evan.
And a Canadian.
I know. I'm surrounded by Canadians. You just keep forcing me to interact with Canadians.
You're
Jamie.
welcome.
Your life is better.
Yes, that's
they
true.
They are lovely people. Y'all are lovely people. Now's the time on our podcast where we talk about what we have been enjoying. Movies, graphic novels, television shows, and I know for a fact that Mr. J has all kinds of stuff that he's been watching because he posts about it all the time on Facebook.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, what does Jay watch this week?
Yes.
And I always appreciate your little blurbs and reviews and whatnot, and have sought out many films because of your recommendation.
Oh, that's nice.
I think I learned about. Is it When Evil Lurks?
Yes.
From you?
Yes.
I think I learned about that.
That's a great one. Great Halloween scary one.
So, Jay.
Yes.
What on your current plate of pop culture smorgasbord have you been consuming lately?
I got to talk about The Substance. That is, it's a horror movie, but oddly enough, for the I don't know if it's Golden Globes or something like that, they're positioning it as a best musical or comedy in that category.
That's the Golden Globes for you.
Yeah, exactly. But it is so great. It's got Demi Moore and Dennis Quaid's got a good role, and I can't remember the other actress's name in it, but it's this body horror movie that really rips a lot of inspiration, and I think in a good way, from everybody from Kubrick to Cronenberg to Raimi, in all the best ways you can imagine what that means, and it is amazing. It's just everything about it. I don't want to give too much away because it's such a treat to watch it unfold as you do it, but it is a body horror movie all about beauty and what that means.
My least favorite kind of horror is body horror. I will watch it, but like of all the horror genres, and maybe torture porn, I'm not like super into torture porn, but I love all horror movies. I do not like body horror and tend to avoid them until it's like, well, I have to watch this one.
I think you still might get something out of this, but
okay.
There's definitely elements that you won't like, I guess. Like
Tusk. I've never seen Tusk. I've seen most Cronenberg films, and I don't like the. Oh my gosh! Anyway.
Yeah.
So The Substance is good.
I loved it.
Awesome. What about you, Jamie?
So many things. Well, this is just a side note, but I just rewatched all of What We Do in the Shadows. So that's kind of like, it's comedy horror. Maybe the Oscars will put it up as a comedy. But yeah, it's just so good, the TV show. I don't know if any of you have watched What We Do in the Shadows. But
I watched the first 2 episodes of the new season last night.
The new season it's so good. It's such a weird season, but it's so good. But the thing that I want to talk about is actually a board game, which is kind of like, it's a new discovery for me, but it's called Witchcraft. It's David Thompson, Roger Tankersley, and Trevor Benjamin, and it's a solo only kind of board game about witches essentially, but you're good witches, and you're trying to like save the town and overcome these missions, while of course the jurors in the town don't believe that you're actually good, and you have to try and convince them like, no, I'm good, look at all the good things that I've been doing to help save people. It's really good. It's like it's a hand management game where you're like, you have your own coven and you can recruit witches, but you might have to like sacrifice some of your witches to go to jail in order to build up your power to overcome different challenges and missions. It plays in like 30 minutes. It's a follow-up to Resist, which is the first game that they did kind of in this series through Salt and Pepper Games and 25th Century in North America. But it's amazing. I played it and I was immediately like, I just want to keep playing this game over and over and
Yeah,
over
but does
again.
anybody even play solo games?
I mean,
Nah.
not really. We've heard that nobody plays them at all.
Solo games are so overrated.
Yeah, but that's what I've been playing
Awesome.
a lot of that. What about you, Evan?
Let's see. I have 2 horror movies. I just watched Terrifier 2 the other night.
Having seen
familiar-
Terrifier 1?
I have seen, yes, having seen Terrifier 1, but Terrifier 3's like, it feels kind of like it's expected of me as a horror fan, as one of the creators of Final Girl, that I should be familiar with with the new hotness in terms of slasher, and it is something. Have you seen the second one?
No. Oh, nor the first. I haven't seen
I
any
haven't
of them.
seen either.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend either of them. The thing that is super impressive about these movies is what they managed to do with the budget. The first budget for the first Terrifier was $30,000.
I see.
Insane.
The budget for the second Terrifier movie was $250,000, and it made like $4 or $5 million at the box office. It's
Right.
basically Damien Leone, the filmmaker. His background was in special effects, so he's doing all the special effects himself, and the special effects are truly spectacular. But
Oh, that's nice.
there were times watching like I watched the second one in like 4 installments. Like I did not like I would be like, watch 20 minutes and I'm like, that's good. I'm good. And then I'll come back to it and watch 20 more minutes.
Are you
I'm
going to
like,
go to
okay.
3 then?
No, I won't go to see it in a theater.
Yeah.
But there is a sequence on a bed in the second one that it is one of the more unpleasant things I've ever seen in my life. So
Oh, that's cool.
if,
That actually that makes me want to see it now.
there's one in the first one. I mean, I'm like sitting there going, oh my god, oh god, no, oh. And I'm not necessarily a squeamish person, but
Nice.
it's if you read interviews with the director, he's really interesting. He's like, there's a line. The Terrifier movies have a line we will not cross. However, that line is a lot different for us than it is for a lot of other people. But it's fascinating listening to him talk about what is too far in his movies. Like he's given, and I'm not going to actually share examples of what he said was too far because it's totally not appropriate at all. But it's really interesting. I really actually like his thinking behind how he built the franchise and everything a lot more than I like the movies themselves. So,
I don't know.
And no, I wouldn't recommend it, Jamie.
I
You
just
can-
feel
you can
like
stay away.
so Max from Table Notes was visiting us a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh, have you watched?" Because we were like going through horror movies to watch, and he's like, "Have you seen the Terrifier movies?" I'm like, I don't feel like I want to, because everybody just talks about how gross they are, and I'm not really into the overtly like disgusting, like elongated killing scenes of. Yeah, I've just seen like the reaction videos from Terrifier 3, which is enough for me to be like, I probably don't want to watch it.
You probably shouldn't see The Substance either then.
Okay, good to know.
The Terrifier movies feel different to me than, say, like torture porn. There's like a level of showmanship in the Terrifier movies that really is about, because Art the Clown he's like pretty humorous. Like his whole thing is almost like he's kind of just having fun. He's like a stand-up comedian mime kind of thing. And he's like, I pulled your eye out and now I'm showing it to you. Isn't this hilarious? And like, you can, like, the character is acted and portrayed as if Art really does think this is all a lot of fun. Like, and he's kind of confused sometimes why everybody's like really not having as much fun as he has. So he's completely insane. He's a sociopath. But like, I think that element, that presentation, changes it than different. Like watching someone get a razor blade in their eyeball in Hostel or something. Like,
right.
That feels there's a level of fun to the Terrifier movies that sets it a little bit apart from just like. We're not just interested in like making like watching some gross things.
Fair enough.
But I don't know that if you watch them you would feel that way. Sure. They're pretty awful.
Duly
anyway.
noted.
Well, let's move on to the word of the month, which maybe this goes well with Terrifier, honestly. So for anybody that doesn't know, we typically do a word of the month every month because board gamers say weird things that make people look at you going, what? What do you mean? What are you trying to say? And the word this month I feel like is appropriate for Halloween season, and it's crunch. Maybe that's a Terrifier thing. He makes people go crunch. I don't know. But it's a word that we often use to describe a board game. Like, this game is crunchy. There's a lot of crunch to it. And essentially what that means is that there's a lot of thinking. Maybe there's heavy strategy, more intense decision making, and careful consideration of every move. This is like a tie on to like brain burniness, that it's very crunchy. So in a crunchy game, players often need to think a few steps ahead, weigh all of their variables, and manage some complex systems. So if you hear somebody describing a board game by saying it has a lot of crunch or it was really crunchy, they're basically just saying that it made them have to think a lot and their brain was crunching inside their head. So I'm just curious for you two, what would you consider to be your favorite crunchy game?
I guess, I mean, if I'm allowed to choose my own, I would say Harrow County.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll not choose that one, but that's obviously self-promotion. But I recently played Nucleum, and even at the outset of this game, I'm like, oh geez, this looks like a crunchy game, and in a overbearing kind of like, oh, is my mind ready for this kind of game? And fortunately, I had a blast with it. I was really pleased with how much direction I felt like I had. Sometimes crunchy games can be like, I don't know which way to go. I don't know what gets me what. It's too opaque, and I can't see through the layers to figure out which one is going to lead to success. And this one, I at least felt like I always had direction on things I could do and try. And I was enjoyed the entire ride, and even though I didn't win, I was very close, and he had played a couple times before, so that made me feel good.
Perfect. Evan, what about you?
Mine, I do not generally like crunchy games. Like Vital Lacerda, if you're like, let's play this Vital Lacerda game. And I'm like, no, I don't want to play the Vital Lacerda game. But my brain, like, I remember going to a convention once and immediately got roped into a game of Kanban. And I was like, okay, I'll try this. And it was at the beginning of the day. It was in the morning. And when that game was done, I didn't play a game for the rest of the day until I was drinking that night and playing party games. Like, it completely, my brain was completely fried.
Yeah.
Completely fried. However, I did play Luthier recently.
So
and really, really loved it. I think a lot of it has to do with how closely... So in Luthier... it's like in Renaissance times or whatever, and you are crafting instruments for patrons like Beethoven and Mozart. And so you're crafting the instruments, and then you're putting on shows in the concert hall with those instruments, and then you're repairing instruments, and then you're doing concerts. It's all that. The mechanics are super closely connected to what you're doing. It's very rare in a Euro or a crunchy game that I actually feel like I'm doing the thing that I'm doing, and in Luthier I actually... as best a box of cardboard can do, makes me feel like I'm making instruments. And the art is Vincent Dutrait, who I love, and it is absolutely fabulous. The way the board is laid out is super cool. Matt Paquette, he and his team are the ones who did the layout of the board, and it's just top notch. So I loved Luthier.
Have you played Distilled from Paverson Games? Oh,
no.
I think you'd love it. Honestly,
yeah?
It's like, well, it's the same publisher that does Luthier,
and
it's the same thing where you're like, everything I do makes sense because I know that I need to have a sugar, water, and yeast in order to make an alcohol. But what kind of alcohol am I making? And yeah, it's fan-freaking-tastic. And it's got a nice amount of crunch in it, too. So there you go.
Especially for people who like drinking whiskey. Like
That's why I thought maybe you might like it.
You're right. Like you don't need to. By the way, for those of you who are listening, I'm now holding up a bottle of whiskey, bourbon made from one of our local distillery. So, yes, that does sound like I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think you'd love it.
So, our product of the month that we are highlighting on today's episode is Hostage Negotiator. And Hostage Negotiator is the first game that really kind of put Van Ryder games into the spotlight. It was created by my partner, AJ Porfirio. It is a solo-only game about being a hostage negotiator, which you can gather from the title of the game. I remember when he put it on Kickstarter, and it did like $11,000, and this was like a decade ago, so it was like a big deal to like raise $11,000 for a board game on Kickstarter, and it's the system. It uses a card and hand management system where you are simulating having a conversation with an abductor. You're gathering different kinds of conversation cards, things like "Tell me your demands," let's let a hostage go. Come on, just let's talk about something. Let's have some small talk, and you're simulating having a conversation, trying to keep the abductors, he's hostility level down. And while also trying to get them to release hostages, because if they get too pissed off, they start to kill hostages, and no one wants that. It's very disappointing. And so Hostage Negotiator is actually the system is the basis for Final Girl. We built Final Girl off of Hostage Negotiator. So one of the big differences, other than the theme, is that Final Girl has a board that replicates movement. So you are actually moving around a board, and Hostage Negotiator does not have that. It's all a simulated conversation. But the game is wildly expandable. Every abductor is all the expansion packs are new bad guys, and all the new bad guys come with new rules and stuff. And so if you love Final Girl and you like that system and you'd like another really great thematic game in with that flavor, Hostage Negotiator is, you could not go wrong with that.
That's why I picked it for the Halloween episode, because I personally find the whole idea of being a hostage much scarier than potentially even being a final girl and running away from a ghost or a slasher, because it's just like, you're trapped and you're up to whatever this guy wants to do.
It's actually in a lot of ways a kind of a heavier, darker game. Mm-hmm. Because I remember sitting down and playing it with one of my friends and just teaching him the rules or whatever, and he was playing, and then all of a sudden one of the cards got flipped that said, like, basically it's a tarot card, and it said to the effect of, like, I'm losing my patience, and the symbol on the card was a hostage dies. Mm-hmm. And he took the little yellow meeple and he put it in the dead section, and he was like, I don't like this game. he felt, even though he was just moving a little yellow meeple, he was just like, oh no, I don't like this. It felt very real to him.
Not to Steve.
Yeah. In Final Girl, I do name all of the victims. The people on stream really love it. They're like, call one Jessica. And I'm like, but that's your name. They're like, it's fine. It'll be fun. I'm like, oh, sorry, I killed you. My bad.
Welcome to the portion of the podcast we like to call the Final Girl Files. This is where we specifically talk about Final Girl, the board game, which is a solo horror-themed board game that we at Van Ryder Games publish, which is also given the inspiration for the name of the podcast. So today we're going to be discussing what makes Final Girl special, which is, I mean, obviously neither of us are particularly objective when it comes to this, but we're going to put on our objective hats and try to understand and analyze why the game has connected with so many people the way it has. It is, in our board gaming world, an unqualified success. We would call it an evergreen game.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning it's just the popularity just keeps going. So why? Why is it so popular? Why do people like to play Final Girl? Jamie, as the biggest, someone who used to be the biggest Final Girl fan and now works for the company, before you worked for the company, before you weren't being paid to say lovely things about our games, why did you like Final Girl as much as you did?
Okay, so there's so many things. We only have so much time. I first discovered Final Girl from Rodney. His how to play video popped up, and I was like, oh, because I love horror movies and I love to play solo games. But before Final Girl, the only solo game that I really had to play was Marvel Champions, which I love, but there's only so much Marvel somebody can have in their life. And right now there's a lot
of Marvel in the world.
Yes. And so I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I went to PAX Unplugged 2021. I just sent the team this video. I actually have on film, like when I first went to the booth. And I'm positive it was AJ who was just like, oh, well, you can get all of it for this deal. And so I texted Rodney and I was like, do I just get all of it? And he's like, I think you're really going to like it. Like, I mean, if it's a good deal. And I was like, all right, I'll take everything. So I took everything that you had, never having played the game before, because I'm like that. I will just go all in. And then I played it one time.
It's our favorite customers.
Yeah.
I've never played this. I'll take all of it.
Yeah, sign me up. And I bought everything for myself, and I bought a second core box, and I think 1 or 2 feature films for my friend Doolin, and it's also I think it's his favorite solo game, one of his favorite games. So, anyways, but I played it, not really knowing what to expect, and I won my first game. Turns out, I played it wrong, but that's fine. But I was like, immediately, I literally, once again, texted Rodney and I was like, I won. He's like, oh, wow. I'm not saying that you didn't. But
I'm curious, what did you play wrong that it made it easy for you? Do you remember?
Yes. So I was not doing the killer action. I was only drawing the tarot card. And I was like, this is easy. Yeah. So I wasn't doing the killer action. Yeah, he's like, I'm not saying that you played it wrong. But and I reread the rule book and I was like, whoop, yeah, no, I totally did. But like just from that first play, even playing it wrong, like there's just something about it that's so addicting. And I think it's because the game itself is so challenging. But you're like, I know what I need to do next time. It has that like little element in it. So you're like, I'll just play again because I can for sure win this time. And I could for sure win this time. So I think it has like a little bit of that addictive element in it. And it just has like an insane amount of variability that every single game is different. Even if you're playing the same feature film, it's always going to be different. Because the item cards that come out might be different. The tarot cards you have might be different. Like your rolls are going to be different. Your strategy is going to be different. And then not only that, you can mix and match everything. And so like for some people, literally all you need is Final Girl, because you can have like a million different board games with just one game. And then you only really need to know one set of rules. So I think that I don't know exactly what it is, but I think there's a few board games out there that have created like almost like a cult following. And I would say that Final Girl is one of those because it has some sort of an addictive element into it of that like, oh, if I just play one more time. And like when you win, like when I played Poltergeist at Sacred Groves and I won quickly, I got so cocky. I was on stream and I was like, you guys want me to play again? Like that was so easy because you're like, oh, well, if I played a game really quick, it's already set up. I'll do it again. And then you get crushed. Like the difference between the two games playing the exact same setup, the same killer, the same location, the same Final Girl, and it being such a different outcome. Like, I don't know. There's something pretty cool about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one of the things you hit on, the variability of the game is a huge part of its appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And most people who buy Final Girl, as is with a lot of people who buy lots of board games, are only ever going to scratch the surface of what it is. They'll play it a couple times. They might really like it. It'll stay on their shelves. But there is the promise of almost infinite mix, like options, infinite scenarios. Like there's always something new, some new combination or something that it's going to do something you've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And just that appearance of replayability is a huge part of the value and what people like. I can compare this to another game we created called Detective City of Angels, which is it's a mystery solving game, but the scenarios, the mysteries are all one and done essentially, because a big part of the fun of that is solving the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've solved the mystery, well, you can't really solve the mystery a second time. And that game gets knocked for that. Gamers will constantly ask, how replayable is it? And my response is always, well, how readable is a book? Or how rewatchable is a movie? Like these things aren't designed, they're stories. They're designed to be experienced once. And you can experience them again and again and again, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be quite the same. And it's the same and so Detective was made that way. But gamers, for some reason, like replayability, which I don't think is actually a word.
Sure it is. We can say it.
We use it like it's a word, but every time I type replayability, I get
auto-corrected,
smacked for auto. Like it's like this is red underline. This is not a word. But replayability is such a big deal to gamers that even if a gamer's going to buy a board game and only play it 5 times, if they don't think they can play it 1,000 times, they might not buy it. They're never going to play it 1,000 times. But just that appearance of replayability is a big part of the value. And Final Girl presents as one of the most replayable board games that you could ever ask for. Like it is just crazy. And when we come out with Series 3, I mean the replayability is going to continue to only skyrocket. I think that's a huge part of the appeal.
Oh, that's a huge part for sure. I mean, I think the replayability thing is hilarious. As someone who owns like 1,000 games, I'm like, LOL, as if I'm replaying all of these games over and over again. Because like when you think about paying for an experience, right? Like I might go to the theater to go see a movie and I'm going to end up paying like $50 by the end of the food and everything. But like you can get a board game and have a great experience for the same amount. But for some reason, we want to stretch it a little bit further. So that's a board gamer thing, I think. But another big thing for Final Girl that I find is that I think like we call it like the immersion of it all, because you are literally playing out a horror movie. And I know some people can oftentimes have issues with luck in games, and obviously there's dice rolling in this game, so there is some luck, but that's a horror movie. Like if you fail your horror roll or if you succeed, like that is just like, yep, that's what would happen. Like of course I got, hit or whatever. Oh, I rolled bad and now that victim's dead. Like that's something that you would experience in a horror movie. And so I feel like the bad things don't feel so bad. They feel more funny when you're playing this versus like another game where you're like, oh, I've worked so hard and then I rolled bad and now I've lost everything. And it's like, yeah, like that's just how a horror movie is. Like you're the dumb person that goes down in the basement with no lights, no power to see what happens. And then what happens? Like you might roll bad, you might not. So I think that's another big part of it. It makes the bad things feel fun.
Yeah, I've discovered a big determining factor of whether someone enjoys Final Girl or not is whether they can enjoy losing.
Yes.
And most of the time with most board games, you're not supposed to enjoy losing. You want to win. But Final Girl makes losing fun because
Yeah.
usually it's happening in some crazy way that you never expected, and it's super entertaining, and it tells a great story. And the game is easy enough to reset that I died real fast. Oh well, whatever. But there are a lot of people, usually people who enjoy Euro games more, or who enjoy solo games that are more like puzzles to solve.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like there is a correct solution to solving this. You just have to figure it out.
Right.
And if you can figure it out, you'll win. If you can't, you'll lose. Final Girl is not like that. There are situations where it does not matter how good you roll. You are dead.
Yes.
Now, it balances, I think it balances luck and skill pretty well, in that good Final Girl players will win pretty consistently. Like unless I'm playing Poltergeist at Sacred Groves or whatever, I will generally win when I play Final Girl almost all the time, because I know the system really well and play it now. So there is a really good balance between luck and skill, but especially when you're starting out playing it, it doesn't feel that way. It feels very much like the luck can be very arrayed against you. And for players who are expecting a more, like, I have total control and I can solve it, they will, and then Hans shows up out of the woods, chops off a victim's head, and then smashes them in the face with a sledgehammer because they tried to shoot him, but they messed up so bad that they shot themselves in the foot. Like that. These are things that can happen. Then if they don't find that entertaining, they're just like, oh, this is just luck, and I rolled bad, and there wasn't anything I could do. Well, then they won't enjoy the game. But it means that the people who do like that, who will laugh when they die in some kind of crazy way, that is a huge part of the appeal of the game. And when people get that, they love it.
Yeah, and I know, like, it's also, there's 11 feature films out now, another 5 coming, and there's like a theme for everyone. I know one of the big things that people used to say to me is like, oh, I don't really like horror movies, like, or they ask, is it too scary? And I'm like, it's not. Like, I have a lot of people that are like, oh, I think I'm too scared to play. And so now I'm just like, oh, well, like, you should start with Once Upon a Full Moon. Like, it's like a fairy tale. So you're just playing through like folklore, and, just pretend you're Taylor Swift out there and in the storybook woods, and you're having a great time. And so I think that, like, there's something now for everyone. And then if they play one, they want to play another one. So even if it wasn't their first choice for a theme, they're like, oh, well, now I want to see how this works. And I mean, obviously a lot, like, the feature films are inspired by things that people recognize. And so I think a lot of people have fun with the little Easter eggs in them and trying to, like, determine, well, this killer's definitely based on this, and this person's name is derived from this. And, like, people get really, like, into trying to solve the mystery behind each feature film and the excitement around what's coming next. Like, there's always, like, an anticipation of, like, ooh, what's next? Because something's coming, but you don't know when it's coming. You don't know what it's going to be. And then you get, like, little bits and pieces of it, and it's just like, yeah, I love that. I love that, personally.
I think I realized that Final Girl was special, which is kind of funny to say because I was one of the people who created it. But when you're making a game, I mean, we put everything into every game we make. Like, we put our hearts and souls into everything we create. But we never know how that's going to translate to the public or to players or whatever. And we've made stuff in the past that we've been very, very proud of and really loved, and then it didn't find the audience that we'd hoped it would find. And so, having done this enough, that was the same for Final Girl. Final Girl was something we poured our hearts and souls into, but we were like, it's a solo horror game. Like, how popular is this really going to be? And our first Kickstarter did really well, but even then, it isn't until the games get into players' hands that you really figure out, are they really going to like it, or did they just like the package it was in? They just like the art and the shininess and the idea, and then they actually sit down to play, and they're like, this isn't that great. But it was probably at the same PAX that you purchased Final Girl. I think that was the first convention we actually sold it at. Might have been. And I was demoing Final Girl. So I was demoing it for like 4 or 5 hours. And I still remember some of those games I watched people play. I can still tell you what happened. And I remember sitting at dinner later that night, literally going through each of these games with the team and telling them, and they're like, this happened and this happened and this happened. And I realized, I was like, I saw stuff. I saw players do stuff today in my game that I'd never seen before. And it was so memorable that even now, 3 to 4 years later, I still remember those games.
Right.
And so that was the moment where I realized, I was like, okay, I think maybe this one is a little more special than the other ones.
Right. Yeah. And it was.
Well, so thank you, Jamie, for all of your thoughts about why Final Girl is so special. This feels a little like self-congratulatory. Self-congratulatory. Is that how you say that?
Congratulatory.
Self-congratulatory. Like we're patting ourselves on the backs. Like, isn't this game we make so amazing?
Yes, it is.
It's pretty cool. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, and join us next time when we will have more Final Girl goodness to discuss on this segment of the podcast.
All right, let's dive into the monthly topic. So today we're talking about the terrifying world of horror. That's everything from movies, books, TVs, board games, whatever gives you the heebie-jeebies. And with Halloween just around the corner, there's no better time to talk about the kind of horror that makes your skin crawl, your heart race, and makes you sleep with the lights on. And I'm very excited because we do have 2 movie buffs here. So we're ready to dive into this because most of the stuff we're going to talk about is going to be horror movie stuff. So I have to start off with the obvious. What is your favorite horror movie of all time? And you can only pick one. And what makes it stand out for you?
Oh, wow.
I mean, for me, tough. I know. For me, it has to be The Shining. It's just, I just love everything about from how meticulous every frame is to the sense of dread and foreboding and the layers of how it gets peeled back of how you learn where Jack's mind is gone. And the acting from all the everybody in it, it's just it really freaked me the hell out when I saw it when I was a teenager the first time, and it stuck with me every time I watch it.
I mean, I have a lot of modern horror movies or more recent ones that I really love, but if I'm only allowed to pick one,
I have only one. These are the rules.
Then I'm picking Alien. That
makes sense.
It continues to hold up. I have watched it. I watched it this year. I watched it last year. It continues to hold up from a filmmaking standpoint, from a special effects standpoint, from an acting standpoint. It is wildly effective. It was just a brilliant, brilliant movie. Ridley Scott just understood how to make it so that it didn't look like a man in a suit. He was very restrained in how often you can see it. It's the sets, everything. Oh, gosh. It's so good.
I honestly think movies from that time before CGI was like a big thing were so much scarier. Like the movie makeup, everything. It just felt.
Oh, yeah. Like the
it
movie
felt real.
The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, is like, that's all real, and it looks amazing. Even now, even today to watch it looks amazing.
100%. So that's the one question. The next question is, what is the scariest
What about yours?
movie?
What about you?
Oh, well, I talk about my favorite one all of the time, and that's Ready or Not. I feel like everybody's probably sick of hearing about it. But I, like...
They're making a sequel.
I know. I'm so excited. I love the campy, weird, like, fun horror. And Ready or Not is just everything that I wanted it to be. And I've watched some other movies that have the kind of same vibe, but that one for me is just the one that stands out. It's just,
Did you see
there's something
Freaky?
so fun.
Did you see Freaky?
No.
That's the one where
Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn, thank you. Swaps bodies with. He's a serial killer, and he swaps body with the final girl, kind of thing, with the girl, and
it's great.
It's great. So it's like a Freaky Friday. That's why it's called Freaky, where they swap bodies.
Right.
But now he has to act like a teenage girl, and this girl is acting like a serial killer. It's crazy cool. It's really fun.
I really want to watch it. Somebody mentioned that to me earlier. I don't know. Was it you, Evan? Maybe somebody mentioned it. So it definitely sounds like it's right up my alley. So I'm gonna put it on my list.
There you go.
All right. Scariest horror movie you've ever seen. It has to be something that is like, even if it's not your favorite, what is the one that is like given you the most scares?
I mean, I can't say. I would probably say The Shining again, because that's part and parcel of why it was my favorite horror movie. But I'll just choose something different to be different. I will say recently it was when it was. Evan mentioned it earlier, was When Evil Lurks, because it's one of those movies where I grab the person beside me like, no, that's not happening. Oh, that's happening. Oh my god, it's great.
Right.
and it solves one thing that I think is a challenge in supernatural horror movies. And something I don't like in supernatural horror movies is when it's happening to one person and then nobody else knows about it. And so they spend 3/4 of the movie trying to convince people this is happening. And it's like, come on, let's get to it. This movie solves that by saying that this bad thing that's in this movie, this supernatural bad thing, everybody knows about it. They've heard about it. And the first time somebody says something like, I saw I don't know what they call this thing, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you did? Oh my god! My grandma once saw one. And like everyone knows about it. So it's not. There's no convincing. It's immediately to the scariness. Like it's scarier that way, I find.
So I've got two, and they both kind of sit in the same genre. I don't know if I would call them scary movies, but they're movies that have stuck with me and lingered for a long time. One would be a movie called The Vanishing. Which was remade, is really crappy remake with Kiefer Sutherland.
Yep.
Do not watch the crappy
Correct.
remake, but if you watch the original, it is. I mean, I saw that. I must have seen that movie 20 years ago, and I still remember how it made me feel.
Yep.
It's about a guy whose wife goes missing at a gas station.
Like that.
She's just gone, and he spends the rest of the movie desperately trying to track her down, find her, find out what happened to her, and ends up connecting with the guy who claims that he knows what happened to her. And I can't I can't recommend it. It's just so.
Oh, I can.
Okay.
I wrote it
Jay
down.
So the second one is similar to that, and it's again it's Speak No Evil. Not the remake that just came out with James McAvoy. Not the remake that just came out with James McAvoy, which has its charms. James McAvoy is amazing, but is not the same. And it is a slow burn. It's like basically it's about a couple that gets invited by these strangers they've met on vacation to come visit them at their little country house. And they're like, okay, why not? So they go out for the weekend to the country house. And it starts to get uncomfortable, and then it gets more uncomfortable, and then it gets more uncomfortable, and then it's just awful. But it is very slow, and the awfulness is not, it's so mundane. I think that's what's so chilling about it. That when I remember the last 30 minutes of the movie, I was just like, no, I should, no, don't like. And then oh God, it's just, anyway.
Yeah, I haven't seen the original. I did see the remake because James McAvoy, I was expecting a lot, and it was really good, but everybody is like, no, you got to watch the original. And I think the thing about that is there's that one line, why are you doing this? It's like, oh, because you let us. Or why are you doing this? Because you were home. Those types of things. It's just there's something about those little one-liners that were like, oh my God, anybody could let somebody do that, because how would you know? Ooh, spooky. Don't like. Yeah. Ugh, yeah. For me, I don't know. Honestly, I haven't watched this movie in so long, but I lived alone and I watched it by myself, and it was a horrible idea. And that was Paranormal Activity, the original one. And there's something about live footage, like the found footage type of horror movie that just, like when I was a kid, the Blair Witch Project scared me so bad I didn't sleep for like months. Even though now I know it's probably not that scary if I were to rewatch it, but anything that's like found footage that makes me feel like it's real, whether or not it does a good job at it or not. And I also have this big thing where like I can watch a lot of stuff, but if it involves a ghost, it just freaks me out. Like I live in a very old house, and like, so as an example, Evan, I think you know this already, but my house was built in the 1940s and the well is inside. And it's in my basement. So like I could walk out there and I could open up the well and look down and hopefully not see a dead girl crawling out of it.
Ringu?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I can't watch any movies that have wells because that's too scary. So
wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen Rec or Rec 2? Like REC?
So when Max was here, we tried to watch it and I can't find a way to stream it in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know how to watch it.
It's my favorite of the scary found footage movies.
Which is what I've heard. Like good. They have, you can find Rec 2, but not the original. And I feel like I need to watch the first one.
100%.
First.
Rec 2 is to Rec as Aliens is to Alien.
Right. Yeah. So if I can find it, I will definitely watch it because I feel like I'd enjoy it.
Have you seen the VHS movies?
I haven't.
Mm-mm.
They are... I think I've only seen the first two.
I heard the recent one is really good, like the current one.
Yeah, they're anthology movies, but they're found footage anthology movies.
Oh, they're all found footage?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But the way that I was just like, this is going to get exhausting. And the way that they tied it together, like connected the different stories and stuff, is actually is pretty clever. I mean, it's not like groundbreaking or anything, but I was like, you know what, this works. I totally believe that that this is that I'm being presented these movies like this, and it makes sense.
I see. I just watched Missing on Netflix, which is not horror; it's more of a thriller, but it's all done via computer screen, and it feels like that's going to get tired soon. But somehow it is fascinating and fast-paced, and all the way she uses technology. And I actually like that they're all the real technology. You know, instead of like, you know, movies don't use Facebook, they use something else. They use all the real technologies in this to check for Google Maps and follow and track, and like it's just fascinating. I really liked it.
It's interesting. I've not even heard about that. So Evan, you've already mentioned that body horror is your least favorite kind of horror. So what type of horror do you typically gravitate towards? Like, what is it supernatural? Is it psychological, body horror, slasher? What's the vibe?
So my favorite is probably not like a genre as like a recognizable genre, but I like emotional horror. I like horror which probably could be considered psychological, but I like horror that connects to either real themes of grief or depression or whatever's going on, and really like loss, and really makes you feel something and not just scare you. So for example, I think the best example of this is The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, which I absolutely adore. But it's scary. It'll scare you, but at the same time you're just deeply connected to the characters and what they're going through and what they're dealing with, and I find it really moving. The Babadook would be another example of a movie like this that really has kind of like an emotional core.
Hereditary?
Yeah, Hereditary, I was going to say.
Hereditary is a little on the more nihilistic end of things.
Oh,
yeah.
At least when it gets to the end, I like...
Sure.
So, but you're right. As you're basically watching a family deal with grief and deal with grief really, really poorly.
Yeah.
So yes, that would definitely be along the lines of what I'm thinking about. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I would say mine would be very similar, but I'll just stick to psychological. I like the ones that mess with your heads. I don't necessarily like the ones where it's like, is it in their head or is it real? I don't because in the end, if it says, oh, it was all in their head, I really hate that as a thing. I'm like, oh, it's more fun if it's really happening. I want this to be really happening, even though there's things like Jacob's Ladder, which that they do it in a good way. Generally speaking, I like the psychological ones where it's I don't know, just creeps inside your own head, and you're double guessing, like movies like Oculus or I don't know, just movies that change your expectations, I guess, and perceptions.
Yeah. I would definitely
way to ruin
lean
Jacob's
that, too.
Ladder for everyone, Jay.
I didn't ruin it. I just said
I didn't ruin it. It wasn't me.
there's ways. You can't
Next
ruin
year-
a 35-year-old movie.
Next you're going to ruin Shutter Island.
What do you mean?
Jeez.
Oh, now you ruin it by saying it can be ruined. Come on.
Yeah, way to go. Jeez Louise. Oh my gosh. I think like psychological is my favorite as well, but I think there's just something so fun about a slasher movie. Like that's like if you're like I want to watch horror and have a little bit of fun, you're probably going for like a bit of a slasher, but if you're like I want to feel something, then yeah, any of the psychological stuff. I'm also not super into like the body horror. I don't like watching people like bones break and stuff like that. It really bleh.
I love it.
It's so gross.
To me, I'm fine with like bones breaking. Like if like Freddy's gonna show up or like Jason's gonna show up and like rip someone's arm off and then like beat them to death with it, that's fun. I'm totally fine with that. Body horror for me is like where they're surgically like you're getting the close up of like your arm getting cut open, and then they're like grafting I don't know a poppy plant into it, and then
Insects
it's
are
all
crawling out of their body.
Right, and then it's all sexual too. So then someone else is getting like really titillated by this thing being put into this other person's body. That's
Well, now you're attacking David Cronenberg specifically. Now
I am very much attacking David Cronenberg.
So you guys, well, I guess Jay, you work at a film school. Evan, you've worked in the film industry. How important do you think sound design is in horror movies and creating that tension? Because I'm sure we've all seen like the funny dubbed over like a horror movie with like a fun little song and how different it feels. What's your take on, I guess, sound design?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think music is one of the more important elements of so many movies. If you take a look at anybody's favorite movie, I can almost guarantee the music in that movie is going to be good in anybody's favorite movie because it really helps. For better and for worse, it really helps manipulate your emotions in a way that is amazing. That's just the sound, the music part. Talking about the sound. I mean, the best movie in recent is literally The Substance. The sound in that movie is bonkers. It's like there is a scene where she's just having dinner with Dennis Quaid, who's eating shrimp, and the close-ups of his mouth as he's eating the shrimp and the squishiness sounds of it all. Like that's the grossest part of the movie is him eating shrimp, and it's like everything about that movie, the sound. I put that in my review. The sound in this movie was phenomenal. It just really heightened everything, and it created this hyper realistic sense of the world, which I think helped with the scares in that one.
I mean, sound is. I'd say sound for horror movies is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, like elements. Like maybe even better than cinematography at times. Like I mean, it is up there. So my favorite example of a movie that uses sound and lack of sound to wonderful effect is A Quiet Place, which that's one of the only movies when I'm showing it to anyone, I'm just like, we're going to turn this up and turn the lights off, and you're going to shut up and you're not going to say a damn word while we watch it.
Yeah.
Like you're not allowed to speak at all.
Yeah. Yeah. The absence of sound, I think, is like a huge part because it's almost like it makes me anxious because I'm like, why is it so quiet? Like, you're just expecting something when something is quiet in a horror movie, and it's just like an anticipation kind of thing.
It's a bold choice when there's a scene that normally in normal movies it's full of like sound action music and it gets you kind of racing, but it's a bold choice to have no music. And sometimes, like you're saying, it gets you. I think Children of Men did this in their action scenes, and it's like thrilling. It's like, oh my god! Not only is it just also a one take shot as well, but it's like, man, that with no music, and then you hear the sound makes even more impact when you hear all the crunches and every bit of the sound and dialogue. Oh,
well, yeah, awesome. Like if someone's hiding from a killer and you don't hear anything except like their footsteps or like there's something about that is scarier for me than even seeing what happens, because something's about to happen, but it's like the build up to it is fear-inducing for sure.
And you wonder how popular a movie like Halloween could be if it didn't have that Carpenter soundtrack to it as well. Like that just hearing that plinkiness on that piano, you start to get scared now. It's like a little Pavlovian. It's awesome.
Yeah. What medium do you think is the scariest way to consume horror? So there's obviously like movies, video games, even books, TV shows. Like, what does it best?
I personally think it's video games. I think there is something. Again, you have to kind of curate the experience a little. So for me, it's like you got to be by yourself. Usually have headphones on, lights down, really focus, no distractions. So you're really kind of committed to what's going on. But that to me is because you're the avatar, you're in it. So what's happening is happening to you. You're not just watching it happen to other people. It's happening to you. And I think that is by far my heart rate gets up in a way playing video games that does not happen when I'm reading a book or watching a movie.
My 3 scariest moments have been in video games, and they're all from the same franchise and different.
Ooh, let me guess.
Yeah.
Is it Silent Hill?
No, it isn't. No, no. The other big one, Resident Evil.
Oh, Resident Evil. Okay.
The first one, you're playing the first one, and you're just walking down a hall, and then something just bashes through the window, and you're, gee, like, because it was scary. And then number 4, you're going along, and you hear this chainsaw. And at first you're like, well, that doesn't sound good. And you turn around and he's like right on top of you and he just kills you. You're like, whoa. And then you start over. And then from that moment on, as soon as you hear a chainsaw, you are freaked the heck out. You are like, oh my God, where is he? I got to get out of here. Holy jeez, holy. And you're just like, you're so scared. And you got to and because he kills you so fast. And that is heart racing every time you hear that chainsaw in Resident Evil 4. And then Resident Evil 7, I played in virtual reality. And you start tied up to a chair. And you have to get out of the chair, and this guy's walking around with this killer guy, and you're creeping around the house, and he's creeping around the house, and you have to, oh my God, it's like you're in a horror movie. It is so scary.
Very visceral.
Yes.
The only video game I play is Stardew Valley, so I don't have the same feelings about oh my God, my pumpkins are going to go bad if I don't pick them. So I would say it's interesting because my favorite way to consume anything horror is actually through TV because I like an ongoing story. So like I love The Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. I love American Horror Stories like Walking Dead, if you want to classify that as horror or whatever. But
Midnight
I think
Mass? Have you seen that? Midnight Mass?
I haven't. It's on my list.
That's the second best one.
I know. I just
Haunting
recently watched From. I don't know
Same
if you
director
watched
as Haunting of Hill House.
I know. I gotta watch.
Mike Flanagan.
It's on my list.
Also the same director as Oculus.
And Dr. Sleep.
I think like for me it's books, and I think so. You've mentioned The Shining a lot, Jay. The Shining is probably the scariest book I've ever read. Like I had to put it down, and like there was a point where I put it down and I said to Jeff, I was like, I can't finish this book. I'm too scared. I'm never gonna sleep. And I think part of it is the absence of anything. You're in your own little world. In your head. Yes. It's quiet around you. You read something, you hear something, and like a cat walking in the background. You're like, oh my God, what is that? So for me, like books are a very like immersive
That's
experience.
a good point. I was almost the opposite of you when I was reading Misery, where it's like super late at night, but I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Like it was so scary. I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
I just had to, and I stayed up like super late because I was just riveted.
Yeah, I think Stephen King has that effect. Like even with The Mist, I listened to The Mist on audiobook while I was driving, and it was the same thing. I'm like, I gotta like freaking out because I'm stuck by myself in a car, and I'm like, God, I hope this doesn't happen right now. But yeah, I don't know.
That's his only story where he likes the ending of the movie better than his own ending of the book.
Yeah, the ending of the movie is insane. I just rewatched it.
Oh my God.
It is, have you?
Oh yeah.
It's
the worst.
Awful.
It's the best. It's the worst.
When I watched it, I remember watching it and I just sat on the couch.
Yeah.
For like 20 minutes. My wife at the time kept coming in and being like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just leave me. Leave me." I just sat there for like 20 minutes staring at the blank TV
it is awesome.
screen.
If anybody listening hasn't seen The Mist, it is everything about that movie is just fantastic.
Yeah. When my friends were visiting a few weeks ago, I was like, has anybody seen it? And they all said no. I'm like, we're watching it. Don't look anything up. Don't read anything. Just watch it and watch till the end.
And it's from Frank Darabont, the same guy who did Shawshank Redemption. And so 2 more Stephen King stories. And he did Green Mile. So he was like the king of turning Stephen King stuff into movies and TV shows. And now we've got Mike Flanagan, who's taken over the helm, I think.
Fun fact: Frank Darabont gave up his salary so that he could have that ending.
Awesome.
Worth it. Worth it.
The studio, it's like the most unpalatable,
yes,
audience non-friendly ending to a movie ever.
Ever.
It really is. So you can
but
see
it's
why
the best. It's
right,
the
it really
best.
It's the best. Yeah, I would agree.
Oh.
Sorry, I brought it up. Anyways, so I asked our guests on our last podcast episode, and this is a question that I ask a lot of people, specifically around this time of year, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts as designers, but do you think board games can be truly scary? And have you encountered one that comes close?
I think if you expand that to include role-playing games where you're now kind of playing as characters and there's more narrative and there's more, I think board games are a bit too abstracted. I don't know. I haven't experienced anything that's scary in a board game, but a role-playing game, I could see that being scary.
Mm-hmm.
The closest I've gotten is the psychological tension of playing a hidden movement game where you are the hidden movement character and you're watching the other players like kind of close in on you and you're like sweating while you're like hoping that anticipation of like, will they find me, will they not find me, and then they point to where I actually am and they're discussing it and I'm like, keep a straight face, keep a straight face, keep a straight face. That is the closest I've ever gotten to being scared. Do
you have any examples of hidden movement games you like?
I can
like
see one.
I mean, there's one called Mind. Yes, right there next Mind Management.
See it.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for getting in your head. I like those.
Well,
that idea. I don't know if it's scary, but yeah, you're right. It's mentally exhausting and fun in that way.
The closest, it's an RPG, but the closest RPG I've got is what's it called? It's the RPG with the Jenga tower.
Dread.
Where as you make certain decisions, have you heard of this, Jamie?
No, I have. I've heard of it. I haven't played it.
So there's a Jenga tower, and which is set up like normal, but as you make certain decisions, it's a one shot. As you make certain decisions, you have to pull out a piece and put it on top, and depending on how severe the action you're taking is, like, it kind of keeps building and building and building, and so there's a very real sense of dread. It's aptly named, as you're going to attempt this thing, like you're going to attempt to like leap across the chasm or whatever, and you're going to have to actually reach out and the tower is getting more and more shaky.
Yeah.
That's the closest a game, like corporately, meaning all the players kind of felt it together, has felt scary.
Good one.
Yeah, I think tonight we have our friends and us, we're going to be playing Mansions of Madness. We're going to put on the music, light the candles, do whatever. And I think that is the biggest thing for me with board games is, like, you just have to set the atmosphere. Like, we've played Night Cage with all of the lights off and red lights on the table and the candle. And you're, like, trying to see what you're doing to give you that extra, like, element of, like, ooh, this is kind of scary. But, like, I've never been actually, like, scared by a board game experience. I'd love to know, what's a horror movie or book or game that you love, despite it being considered bad, and I'm putting bad in quotation marks, or poorly received? So what is, like, the trashiest horror movie that you just think is amazing?
I've got a one that I like, and I know some of my friends don't like it, and so, but I think it's culty, so I think there is a fan group for it, and it's a weird one called Sangre, and it's by Alejandro Jodorowsky, who's made super inaccessible weird movies like Holy Mountain and El Topo that are just like, I can't even watch them. They're not for me. But this one's accessible and is a really, it's got at least, I think I counted 6 visual scenes in it of things that you've never ever seen. Not always gross and weird, just not gross. It's definitely weird, but things that you've never seen before. But it's basically a circus, but a family in a circus, and a little boy witnesses his father kill his mother, or other way around. His mother killed the father because the father was cheating on him. And then he fast forwards and he's grown up and he's in a mental institution and he escapes and he starts killing people. And so it's kind of a slasher movie where we are following him. And he's the hero protagonist of the story, even though he's the killer. And
interesting.
I thought, and it uses diegetic music. Have you ever seen a movie with diegetic music in it? Where diegetic means it's happening in the world. The music is happening in the world.
Oh, okay.
And so you hear music and it feels like, oh, cool. And as he walks, there's like a band in the background playing it. Like, oh, it's from, so it's like, it's all part, and I guess not 100%, but a lot of the music is diegetic. And that, to me, that was just an interesting choice. And just, I don't know, I love circus movies and insane asylum movies for some reason. For horrors, those are two genres I like in the horror, and they combine it nicely.
I think it's kind of like an impossible question to answer because baked into the horror genre is an element of cheesiness. Like, I'm trying to think of a movie that is so bad that no one likes it, and it's that I would then like, and there's lots, like, especially in the 80s, horror is littered with crappy, stupid, cheesy movies, and yet that they all have fans. Like, there's just this deep... They're very appealing because they are cheesy and dumb and stupid. So I feel like just, it's like, for example, like the Final Destination movies. I love the Final Destination.
Yeah.
Especially number 2.
They're super dumb.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody would be like, oh, those movies are so stupid. Like, it's just like, yeah, of course they're stupid. And I got to watch a guy fall off a ladder and hit a bowling ball that rolled down and hit a thing that flipped a shower curtain, and then he was strangled to death in the shower curtain. But that's not how he died. He then got electrocuted.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
There also happened to be a toast. The bowling ball hit a toaster and flipped the toaster into the tub, and now he's dead. And it's like, of course that's dumb. It's the point, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fair, because, like, my answer is definitely Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But like you mentioned, like, everything has a cult following. Like, everything...
True.
Like, if I show that movie to my friends that I guess have no sense of humor, they might watch it and be like, well, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. I'm like, well, no, you're not watching it. They put people in cotton candy, and it's hilarious. Like, but, yeah. I think you're right. That's fair. So, last question... If you could be the lead in any horror movie, which cliche character would you choose to play? So do you want to be the jock, the final girl, the skeptic? And how would you try to survive?
I think I'd be the comedic sidekicky one, like the one that's always doing like the funny jokes. They usually last a lot longer to keep the jokes going,
They do,
so,
yeah.
That would be good. And, in the Freddy Krueger world, like, he's always coming up with the one-liners and stuff like that, so... That would be a fun way to try to out one-liner the slasher killer guy. That'd be pretty fun.
Okay, I'm going to be a little crass here and say I'd want to be the jock because at least I'm getting laid before I die.
That's typically how those movies do go. And I'm just going to be obvious. Hold on, I got to pull up my final girl card. I'll pick the final girl because I don't want to die.
Interesting.
I'm not interested in surviving something like that and carrying that amount of trauma for the rest of my life. No thanks.
Yeah, but just think, like, you'd be so popular. Everybody would want to do interviews with you, and you'd be alive. So maybe you could save, like, one other person, and that would be worth it. All right. That's the discussion. We're ready for you, Evan, and your super fun game.
All right, we have a special game just for Jay. It is the How Well Does Jay Cormier Know Jay Cormier Designed Games? Dun, dun, dun.
All
now,
right.
Jamie, you may also participate.
I've played many of your games, Jay, as you know.
Awesome.
So.
Okay,
Yes,
that would
Can
be,
I phone
that
a
would
friend?
Be no.
If only the
cannot-
president of the Jay Cormier fan club was here.
Right?
That would be pretty funny, Jamie, if you managed to beat Jay at this game. That would be
Yeah,
pretty
that'd be
amazing.
great.
Who knows?
All right, so I have 10 questions, and they're going to go in ascending order from, I think, easiest to hardest.
And is it
If you
first
can-
to buzz in, or are you just asking one of us at a time?
No, you can, well, I guess Jamie can
If you don't know it, I'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah. If you don't know it, if
Okay.
Jamie can answer,
Then I get a
it,
chance. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Here is question 1. What is the only game where you, and this is an easy one, this is a layup. What is the only game where you are listed as the sole designer?
Yeah, that is an easy one. It is Draw Your Own Conclusions.
Ding, ding, ding. That is correct. I love how, for those who are listening, Jay has behind him a wall of games, and it's all games that he has games that he's designed. So literally, the answers to all of these questions are like behind him in different ways. All right. Yes, Jay, that is correct. That is the only game that you are the sole credited designer on. All right. Number 2. What are the 3 basic actions you can take in Harrow County?
Oh, I see. Well, I guess you mean advance, spawn, and strengthen.
Correct. Advance, spawn, and strengthen is correct.
Yeah.
See, I'm giving you easy ones because that's like you've been living in that world.
Yes, I have.
So. All right. Question number 3. How many shift packages are included in mind management?
14, 7 for the rogue agent, 7 for the recruiter.
Obviously.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so we're still easy. All right, we got to wait to. All right, now we're getting a little trickier now.
Here we go.
I think. All right, maybe we'll see. All right, question 4. How many rounds are played in a game of Belfort, and how many times are points scored during the game?
7 rounds, and then 3.
Bonus: which rounds are points scored in?
3, 4, and 7. No, sorry, 3. Wait, 1, 2, 3. What is it? No, it's 1. Oh, I don't even know. 1, 3, 5, and 7.
3, 5, and 7 is correct. All right. That was a little harder.
That was a bit trickier. Yeah.
I feel like we're scaling up. All right. Question number 5. What is the end game condition in Tortuga? When does a game of Tortuga end?
Whoa. Wow. Oh, no. I think you might get me on this one. That's it is a certain number of gems have been transported. A certain number of treasures have been transported to your final ship. And I'll say 6.
So 6, and where are they stored?
In your, I don't know what that term, but it's your big ship, your final ship, your is there
your
a
boat.
hold? Your boat, yeah.
It's there. It's when the 6 treasure chests are stored at Tortuga.
That's
He's
weird.
like, that can't be right.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, I've just read the rule book recently, so I could be wrong, but you score lesser points for treasure chests that are on your ship or in your hold.
Well, that's the thing. There's a boat. There's you start on the land and you sword until they get to your boat. Then on your boat you have cannons, and then it gets to your final thing, which we always assumed was the final ship. But I guess that could be Tortuga. Maybe
you call it Tortuga in the rules. You know what? But you're right. It was 6 treasure chests. Whoever gets 6 treasure chests.
The challenge with that one is that that publisher changed the rules a lot. The most of any game we've ever designed, the rules were changed on that one, and so maybe I don't know the final rules versus how we played it.
Nice. You gonna pull out that little asterisk again?
Yes.
You can't answer another question,
Yeah.
Jay? Oh, the publisher changed the rules.
Yeah.
Those aren't the original. All right. Question number 6. Who is the start player in a game of junk art?
Oh, that's a great one. Oh, yeah. What is the start player in the young? I'll just say youngest because I can't remember what it is.
Jamie, for the chance to steal.
Let's see. Typically, when I play any board game, we don't follow the start player rule.
You can imagine that it's probably something a little clever.
Yeah, I was trying to think
know.
what it could be, but what could it be? Who picked
Is it the first person to like build something?
No, it's the last person to visit an
Last.
art exhibition.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Cool.
Shoot.
Got one. You got
All
one.
right.
That was a good one.
I got one on you.
Yep.
Question 7. Which is your only game that I am listed in the playtesting credits for?
Oh.
Mind management.
Correct.
It was
Which is strange.
It was an eventful playtest. It changed the entire direction of the game because we had been playtesting it for a long time with our core group, and in a one versus many game, whoever lost would always say, it would be better if I could have done this. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's let you do that. But then it got so big that when we brought it, and Evan, I think Matt Leacock played with you, it was so bloated, and the learning curve was so steep. It was like it broke everyone's brains. It's like too much. And so that's when we came up with the shift system idea of like, what if we just boiled it down to the core game and then added these things one at a time in the shift, and that made it great. So that was a very pivotal playtest.
Good job, Evan.
I was just present for it. I don't know that I offered a whole lot of helpful suggestions.
We broke your brain. That helped.
So Jay, I'm very impressed so far. Here we go. Question 8. I can't tell if this one's going to be hard or not. 9 and 10. If you answer 9 and 10, hats off to you. But
Yeet.
8 is anyway. All right. So in Acrotiri, you may purchase new map cards for a cost. What is the cost to buy 1, 2, or 3 map cards?
Nicely done. Nicely done. I'm going to say 1, 3, and 7.
What's the currency?
1, 3, and 7 drachma.
Yes, correct. Damn, Jay, you know your game so well. All right. 1, 3, and yes. 1 map card costs 1,
Woo.
2 costs 3,
That was a tough
and 3
one, though.
costs 7. All right, here we go. Number 9. In the Hall of the Mountain King, how many different kinds of workshops are there?
Oh, jeez.
And
that's a good
how many can you name?
Oh, man. Because they're not like, they're just like little tiles. Do they have a name?
Oh, they all have names.
Oh.
And they're actually pretty good names, too.
Oh.
They're memorable names.
I mean, I have no idea what it could be. I'd literally be guessing. It would be somewhere around, I'll say 14 different ones.
No, there are 11.
11? Oh, not that many. Okay. But then as far as naming them, no, I'm like...
Oh, man. Cartwright, Charmcrafter, Coin Press, Metalworks, Pickforge, Quartermaster, Runesmithy, Stone Grinder, Stone Mill, Tool Forge, and Wheeljack.
I believe that all came from the publisher. That feels like the first time I'm hearing that. Like, wow. That's awesome.
All right. Now, here's one that you cannot blame the publisher for.
Uh-oh.
In Core of Discovery.
Here we go.
Which is coming out...
January.
What are the levels of success that you can achieve at the end of the game? And what are the point values associated
Well,
with
I don't know. I don't have that memorized. That's a good one. Yeah. Sen came up with the names of them, like Novice Scout or something, and like something... he's good with all the, terms and words and stuff like that. So he came up with a cool Pathfinder something or other, and... I cannot remember. And we actually took it to, when we did it at Origins and Gen Con and we demoed the game, we had a big scoreboard with these things. So I remember them and I see them, but I can't remember the thresholds, what any of them are at all.
Do you remember what the best one is called and how many points you need to
28 or higher.
To do it? It is 28 or higher.
If that was a question, then I'd be fine. But all of them, like, oh my gosh. What was that one called? I don't even know. Expert... Pathfinder? Is that it or no? I can't remember.
Veteran Pathfinder is number 4.
Oh, that's number 4. Oh, what's higher than that?
Fearless Trailblazer is number 5.
Nice.
And the best you can get is Master Explorer.
There it is. Master Explorer.
28 points.
Nice. Good questions.
Well, thank you for playing Jay Cormier's... How well does Jay Cormier know Jay Cormier design games?
Pretty well. I do have to say
he knows them pretty well.
He knows them pretty well. He had a cheat sheet behind him. It's just a wall of his games. So you look back.
It didn't help for the last 8 questions though.
No, that's true. Awesome. Well, that is what we have for today's episode. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Jay, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let the listeners know what have you got going on and where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we speaking of scary stuff, we have Harrow County, the game of Gothic horror. So that is out in retail now. It's a new game this year, and it's doing really well. I think it's still at an 8.1 on Board Game Geek, which is very nice. And it's a 1 versus 1, effectively asymmetric game where the coolest thing about it has a cube tower built right into the box, which is just fun and thematic to the story as well, based on a really cool comic. And then we have Core Discovery, which is coming out in January. So that's going to be in retail February probably. You can find me on Off the Page Games on any of the socials.
Awesome. And I have to say, I mean, I got Harrow County upstairs. That box is freaking cool. I love when things do multiple things. It's super fun. Yeah. All right. So thank you once again, everybody, for listening. I hope everyone has a very happy and safe Halloween. Eat all the candy. Watch all the scariest of movies that you possibly can. We'll be back again next month with another episode. But that's everything for today. So thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.